when I formed the Fall, the ultimate goal was like to sort of have a group that was organic, that can just go up there and do various things and sort of could cope with, and have the discipline as well. You know, I want it to be free form with discipline, which is sort of an easy thing to say. Most bands would claim to be that, but in fact they're not, you know. It's just getting a balance.
Yeah, we are the Fall, and we are the best. Yeah, we are the Fall, and we are the best. Yeah, we are the Fall, and we are the best.
We are the Fall. I'm Gavin, and you should say I'm Steve.
I'm Steve.
And we're the Fall. Actually, we're probably the two of the only people on the face of the earth that haven't been in the Fall. Today, we're going to be talking about diving into the first bit of the Fall discography, and maybe Steve, you can tell me what do you know about the Fall?
So the Fall, Marky Smith out of Manchester, England. They've had, quite a bit of members. Mark is the only member that made it the entire time, obviously. Started with some, friends, and they lasted a while until, it started to basically get some fame and, kind of slowly fall apart as others, drifted in and out. And, Mark got a little bit more unreasonable with his expectations.
Unreasonable or more stringent. Yeah, so Marky Smith, right? I don't want to spend too much time on the history because there's a lot of Fall things you could look up online and a lot of experts, and we're not experts, but basically Marky Smith, he was born and raised in Manchester area and working class family. He was not really into music until he got this record player. His dad brought home this record player. And he started getting into music. Do you know what his first record he bought was?
I do not.
It was Black Sabbath's Paranoid, which I believe is pretty fitting for some of the paranoia that we're going to be kind of hearing in this first EP. I got to say, I'm relative. I've listened to Fall on and off, but not really dived in like fully. And so a lot of this stuff is new, or I'm just going to experience it new, which will be cool. But Marky Smith has been the only member of the Fall, and there's the famous quote of him saying, if it's me and your granny playing bongos, he's like, that's the Fall. So anyone that has been a part of the Fall is just part of the overall oeuvre of the Fall sound, which is kind of interesting because even though he's gone through something like 50 or 60 members, the sound of the Fall is not really that different as it moves forward, right? So he dropped out of school, I think when he was around 16 years old, and he said he was always good at literature, so it wasn't like he couldn't do it, but it wasn't of interest to him. And he got this job working at the docks. He was like a shipping clerk, and on his lunch breaks he would write. He would type up his writing, and it wasn't music related. It was just writing for writing's sake. So he's always been a writer, and he thinks of himself as a writer throughout this whole time. It wasn't until him and his friends went to go see this concert, which was the Sex Pistols, and I guess a bunch of other people in the scene, members that formed the Buzzcocks and some other bands also went to the same show. So it was kind of like an instigator for a bunch of Manchester bands and related bands. After they saw the Sex Pistols, they kind of said, I can do that, which I can relate to. If you hear the reason I started playing in a band was hearing bands that were not necessarily good, technically good, but then they got in, but hearing that made it accessible. So he got into it, and he started the fall with his friends. Him and his friends, after seeing the Sex Pistols, started the fall right away. The original name of the fall was actually going to be The Outsiders, but it turned out they found out that there was already 2 bands called The Outsiders, so they had to go with their second choice, which was The Fall, which I think The Outsiders is a real fitting name for them too, you know?
For sure. I think it was like a posh London band too that had already taken The Outsiders, so they were real turned off by that.
Right, exactly. And so they start playing, and it also is interesting. I read that he was originally going to be the guitar player, and he was going to be the guitar player because Martin Brahma, who's the guitar player on basically just the first couple of recordings, and I'm excited to listen to this album because the guitar playing is some of my favorite of all, like in general, of fall things that I've listened to, and so he was going to play it because he thought Martin Brahma was a much more attractive guy and he would be a much better frontman. And so it was him, Martin Brahma, his girlfriend, Uma Baines, who played the keys, but she actually started playing on flipped over cookie tins as the drummer when they were starting to play in their flat. And then also Tony Friel on the bass and Carl Burns, who also is super fitting to the sound of the early fall, but he only stayed on for a couple recordings as well. But then later in the fall's career, he comes back, and when they have the 2 drummers set up, he's one of the drummers, and it's really good stuff when he is in the band because they go through numerous drummers, but some of the drummers that they come into playing with early on they've been noted to be not the best fit for the band, right?
I was going to say, he didn't particularly care who was in the band as long as they were willing to play in the band. And, you know, taking a lot of, you became a roadie, and then all of a sudden you're playing in the show because someone didn't show up that night. So
Right. An unpaid roadie. An unpaid roadie. That's just like a lot of the hangers-on that are like fall fans originally become part of the band, which is really interesting too, right? Because like they're already fans of the band and then they're in the band, so they obviously like the sound and they're not gonna journey that far away from the overall aesthetic, even though Mark has to employ his rules, right? His structure,
which makes it probably better for him if you've got a bunch of fanboys that are in your band and they're already over the moon about what you do. They're just going to want to continue that on and make it sound as good as they can, whether they're talented enough or not.
Definitely, they're already into the sound, so they want to make that sound and make that sound in a way that's pleasing, right, to them, and then Mark's going to make sure that it's pleasing to him. So and also it's kind of cool because he's had multiple partners, right? Wives that have been in the band, girlfriends, even some of the later partners that he had were in the band in some form, as far as a manager, fan club manager. So if you're in Mark's kind of world, you're a part of the fall in some way. Even setting up gigs, like there's all these people that are his collaborators, and they can only take so much before they're just kind of like, okay, I need a break from this, or they get forced out. So the fall's gone through something like 50, 60 members. They made 30-something studio albums, and that's not even coming close to the number of live albums that they released, which is
confusing.
Important.
Confusing too, because they're all named live at so and so, and then there's actually some live ones, and you're like, is this studio? Is this live?
Yeah.
How am I going to listen to this here?
Yeah, and then the next one we're going to get into their first LP, right, which is Live at the Witch Trials, which is it's technically not live at all. They recorded it live in a studio, but it's not live. So so there's a lot of, it's already very, I think about the fall sound is just pure art, right? It's just pure art, whether it's rock and roll or just experimental. It's just pure art in the way that it's portrayed and that he released it. And he's just prolific. Like also when they started playing, they played a handful of gigs originally, and they started getting some fan base because they were so interesting. And so this small label gave them money to record this album, which we're going to get into, which is Bingo Master's Breakout. It's the EP, the first recording they released. It's 3 songs. And then we're going to talk about 2 of the first singles that they released after that in a short period of time. And I think they all go together pretty well as a bunch. So it'll be good to discuss them together. But they got this money to record the album. They recorded Bingo Master's Breakout with a couple other tracks, or at least one other track that didn't make it. And so they had the recordings done. The label basically said, we don't have the cash to release it, or to promote it or release it. So they were pretty much sitting on it until this label stepped forward, which released this EP and the first two singles, first couple of singles, released it. And the Step Forward label is, I don't know if you listen to some of their other stuff, it's very, not, late 70s punk rock. It's straight punk rock. It sounds like it's right up the alley of Sex Pistols, I wouldn't say early Clash, but it's much more far out than early Clash. Do you have any other overall kind of feelings about this EP before we jump into it?
Yeah, I mean, so, like reading about it and even like just the time, it was definitely a time of new bands forming and just kind of making music to be creative and to live, it seems like live their best life, right? Like go out there and make music and have fun. And it definitely seemed like, Mark was more dedicated to the art than the other guys. A lot of them were image based and wanted to make it big, where, looking at obviously his long career, but like this is more dedicated to a craft versus just trying to be somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. And because of his background, and his family is just generations, like it's like they were like plumbers, and then they were the working class background. You can really see that from the start in 1978 until fucking 2015 or whatever, whenever he had to stop, like physically had to stop, he was like workman's ethic. And he always would be talking about how he couldn't put out albums quick enough, and it was always based on the labels would be trying to slow him down for album cycles. And he said by the time he was done recording an album, they would go and tour it, and they would already be playing almost a completely different set of all new songs and not any of the songs on the album. So with that, let's jump into the first track of Bingo Master's Breakout, which is Psycho Mafia. So this is, for me, like perfect lead-off song, give you a taste, but it's really totally different than any of the fall sound that follows this recording-wise. It's very palatable because it is, in fitting into the Step Forward kind of record label that picked it up, it's very much punk of the era, but it's so tight, and I don't know if we even hear this amount of band tightness from the fall after this point. It gets much looser, and it gets much more expansive, and it gets much more repetitive as they move on. But this is such a tight song, and the drums are some of my favorite drumming. It's almost what keeps it rolling along.
I was going to say, he's definitely singing more in this than he does going forward,
Yeah, totally. And this one is just, Mark's on the street, the dirge and the and the disturbingness of almost, you know, the paranoia of being chased down by some sort of crazed mafia member of a gang, right?
Sure, and you know, I think where they lived in Manchester at the time was a pretty, you know, rough and tumble neighborhood, and being kind of a punk freak wasn't always welcome or, you know, expected. So there probably was real gangs
Yeah.
out there, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And even like, I mean, it's so straightforward, but it doesn't have what we're going to expect to be like the literary, you know, the literary kind of artistic lyrics that come later. What this one is just straightforward rocking from front to back. I just like this as a lead-off track. It's really fun.
It definitely sounds nice. You know, it would be hard to write your first song and just make it exactly what you had in your head versus what you've been listening to for so long.
Right. And it's also interesting too because this band is maybe it might be the most technically like quote unquote good band that he has because you know the drums, the bass, the I mean everything is kind of in sync. And later on he talks about through the whole Fall career, he talks about how he has to almost teach the musicians that join his band to unlearn how to play, you know, because they are somewhat technically good or to really proficient in their instruments, and he has to force them to unlearn things or to just straight up simplify or cut things out so that it can be maybe just leave the openness for him to just paint a crazed masterpiece of words over the top of, right? So not as busy. Yeah, great lead-off track. Now let's jump into the title track, Bingo Master's Breakout.
Two swans in front of his eyes, coloured balls in front of his eyes. It's number one for his Kelly's eye, treble six right over his eye. A big shot's voice in his
So this one is
ears,
like, this is where I feel like I get the
silence
first
in
taste
his
of what the
ears.
Fall really is. It's slow and brooding at the start, and this drum is the simple drum beat, and just letting Bark set the scene of this bingo number caller getting ready to call these numbers, and you already know that there's something not sinister, but he's looking down upon this bingo caller because there's some sort of sadness in there.
Sure, and I think you've all been in a bingo hall and felt that sadness anyways, right? Like,
Have you ever been in a bingo hall?
oh yeah, been in a lot of bingo halls, seen a lot of old ladies just chain smoke cigarettes with their little stampers going to town.
Yeah, it is an environment that is, you wouldn't think, oh, you know what would make for a great rock song? A bingo hall environment. And not only a bingo hall environment, but the guy calling the numbers is going to be the main character. You know, that's not rock and roll at all. That's something that's you know, obscure kind of character study. And also, I mean, I've been to bingo hall in Texas, and I went one time, and it was down the street from my apartment. And I went there one time, and it's massive. It's a massive bingo hall. But you go in there, and, you know, people are there for a couple different reasons. The cheap drinks, you can smoke inside, and also you got a chance to win some cash.
Oh yeah, I used to go to the back of the VFW, and my grandma played every week, and the entire everyone in there was smoking cigarettes. They all had 10 to 15 cards each, and just waiting to hit, right?
Yeah. And the sadness that's in the room too, because some of the people that are in that bingo hall are not there for fun. They're there to make what they hope to be a living for a short period forward to to the month.
I was gonna say cover. You got to cover the wine bill for the month for sure.
Yeah,
that's all you need.
Yeah.
Hit one bingo and you can take it. I like it, even like here it's just like, you know, all he sees is the back of chairs in the mirror and a lack of hairs. Like, right, just like looking at all these old white hairs, just living their best life, I guess. What they can.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the line that holiday in Spain fell through. And so it's like, I mean, that one is just so, it's so sad because it's like, you know, he's been looking forward to this or planning this holiday trip, and he's working the bingo hall. And I don't know in the UK if they get paid to do that. They probably just get paid. I'm guessing they just get paid in lager,
right,
and pints. But this holiday in Spain falls through. It's so sad, so depressing. And then at the end of the song, a half full of cards left unfilled, he ended his life with wine and pills. And then we go to his grave. There's a grave somewhere only partially filled. A sign in the graveyard on a hill reads, "Bingo Masters Breakout." You know, that's how you end a song.
I was gonna say
that's how you end a story. That's how you end a song.
And that's really what the, you know, where you see, you know, some of Marky's you know, poetry, right? Like this is different than the first song where you're like, okay, he wrote this and then, you know, the music came to it to obviously enhance it.
Definitely. No, this is a classic. I mean, this is classic fall, the start of the fall, for me at least. And then we go into what might be the most self-referring fall song about the stylistic choices and the interest of the fall. But before we do that, because this would be the end of side A, I think this is a good point where, you know, you're flipping the record over, and this is usually the point where I'm grabbing this album cover and I'm saying, you know, what's this album cover artwork all about? You know, what do you
Sure.
What do you think about when you're looking at this album cover artwork, Steve?
Well, I guess my question, I obviously have seen it, and I've, you know, stared at this bizarre caricature
For years,
wondering what's going on.
You have it hung up someplace in your house?
No, it scares
over the mantle.
It scares my daughters, so you know. Yeah,
she's rightfully scared.
Right? Is he in a straitjacket? Is it a belt? What's going on exactly?
Yeah. So we got this. I suppose it's the Bingo Master, and he's got this locked up. Yeah, straitjacket. He's all locked up. He's got the numbers in his eyes, reflecting back. Losing that hair pretty quickly, and this kind of fits in nicely with the Psycho Mafia, you know, because there's this psychotic look on the Bingo Master's face.
Sure.
This.
I mean, it looks like he's probably, you know, in his grave suit. You know, he's wearing his best.
He's
suit
ready
right
for the
now.
grave. You're right.
Tied up.
He's ready to call that final number. The final number is going to be called, and he's going to head to that grave. And then it looks like this text is so fun. It's so hilarious. This text makes it look like this was a sketch done by, and I don't know.
I was going to say, do you know? Do you know the artist?
No. Like we're not fall experts, right? We're here for the enjoyment of the journey of going through the fall albums. But this text looks like it was drawn in, you know, in your high school yearbook. You drew this and you were like, this is going to be my band's first album cover. You know, this was written during for Mark. This might have been drawn in literature class.
Sure. I mean, this could have been drawn in the car, dropping it off to the recording studio. You know, you're not even really sure how thought out it was.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, at some point he was like, okay, I got the Bingo Master. What am I I need something else here. I'm going to make this weird, abstract kind of, what is this, like a tomb? And maybe that is the tomb where he's going into it. And then a little card with an elephant.
Are they little cryptids back there? Yeah, I mean, the laser beam through his head. I'm not exactly.
Yeah. There's some sort of some wire. Either way, I think they nailed it for this. I think this is perfect visualization
I would buy this if I didn't know who the Fall were and I saw this guy flipping through the record.
I would definitely be interested in picking this up as well. At least for a spin. Okay, so now we flipped it over. We're side B. Now let's jump into repetition, the 4 R's.
Right noise! We're gonna get really speedy. You're gonna wear black all the time. You're gonna make it on your own. 'Cause we dig ya. 'Cause we dig ya.
I like that he has to verbalize the white noise. Like he's summing the white noise into existence. He is the conductor, right? This is like him showing, I'm conducting this band. I'm directing this band. Or at least I'm the screenwriter for the kind of the play or the theatrical production. And the guitars on this Martin Brahma, oh man, the guitars are just so great. It's so simple, but it's just so hypnotic.
Yeah, which is great with the repetition, right? You're just like boom, 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 boom. Yeah, this is Fall that continues on, right? Like,
yeah,
with sound.
Yep, this is the start of the repetition of all of the repetition that goes through the remainder of the Fall's career. A simple driving beat, but then the drums are the only thing that kind of changes it up with these drum fills, and it really kind of re-grabs your attention if you're just kind of listening to it in the background, or you're listening to it for the first time. Instead of being hypnotized and zoning out, you're kind of like pulled back into like, oh, is it going to another part?
No.
Nope.
No. Slow. No.
Pretty. Nope. Wait, but is it? No. There's no chance. We found. I could see Mark being like, "You guys have fallen into something. Somehow you've fallen into something. Keep it going. I'll give you the head nod when it's done." And actually, I don't think they even end this one. This one just fades out, which is very fitting as well.
Yeah, I mean, then here he starts to get, political and, and a little bit more poignant with some of his
shout outs.
His shout outs and his, his lyrics.
Yeah. Yeah, and he also is referencing back to the psychotic nature of the first song is, the electroshock therapy. Trying to get shocked out of the repetition, and maybe attempting to be shocked out of the repetition, you go further into the repetition, right? It has the opposite effect, sends you deeper into it.
Right, and I mean, I think he definitely saw himself as an outsider, right? As someone unique to the norm and what everybody else around him was kind of doing, right? He thought he saw things differently and incorrectly. Yeah,
definitely outsider perspective for sure. And I wonder where that came from, because I'm always interested in that from Mark's sake, is like, or we talked about earlier, like he was originally not going to be the front man of the band, right? He was going to be the guitar player. And for whatever reason, maybe because he was not good at guitar, or maybe because he's like, I could write much better lyrics.
Yeah, I would assume that I mean, like we said, we're not experts, but like, I assume he was like, the shit you're writing is trash, and I'm not going to be in a band like this.
Let me give this a shot. Yeah. Why don't you grab a guitar? Also, I got to assume, too, it was kind of twofold, where Martin was a very good guitar player, or became a very good guitar player, and he was like, this is going to work much better with you on guitar, right? And the idea that he was a more attractive guy goes out the window. But Mark is such like his face, you know, and especially as he aged, his face is so, you know, I wouldn't say it's attractive, but it's very much, it's like a singular face, right? And he got more and more like looking like a caricature of himself, but like further, you know, all of the features got even, I don't know, elongated and magnified. That he has an outsider looking appearance, doesn't he? I mean,
you don't expect him to be the front man, right? The highlight of a band.
No, you're not going to pick him out of. And when we look at the album cover of the first single, we're gonna see a bunch of the lads and Yvonne, I think, on there, and you're not gonna pick him out as the as the front man if you had the choice without listening to any of the music. But his something that's interesting. I tried to look it up because I was interested. Is where did he get this very stubborn approach? You know, where he had to have it this way, and he was very dictatorial with his band. Where did he get this? And I also wonder, because he looked like that. And actually, when he was young, I got to give him credit. When he was young, he had a look of definitely an artistic look.
Sure, he looks like any of the other. You know, he looks like a Mick Jagger up there standing at the microphone as a young man. Like, you know, he is attractive. He's got the style.
Yeah.
Like,
somewhat nerdy. You know, and I was wondering, did he get bullied? You know, because he's been accused of by multiple people of being a bully when they're part of his world, of his creative world, right? Of him bullying people into getting what he wants. So I always wondered that, and I can't really find any of that, but I kind of made this little backstory in my head of like, maybe he was in school getting bullied, or he's so witty, I hope that he would be able to be like, you know, sticking up for himself. But his look was just like, maybe he did get kind of pushed around a little bit. So when he became able to make his own world of the fall, he just like, it was like, no one's getting anywhere near this. No
one's taking a piece of my pie, right? Like, I'll give them a piece, but they don't get to pick, right? Like,
And you got to fit in. You got to fit into my world now.
And exactly, and like, you know, whether it's bullied at school or, you know, obviously this was in the 70s, right? Blue collar life, you know, probably the home life wasn't exactly stable. And,
definitely.
And then you surround yourself, you know, with girlfriends and wives who are in your band, who are, you know, enamored with you and, you know, think you're super cool and interesting. And then you're like, well, this is how I should be treated all the time by everyone.
Sure, definitely. And can you imagine, like, picking up this record and, like, bringing it home when you're, like, when you start to get into music, you know, you're in, like, your early teens and you're listening to this upstairs. Can you imagine being in your upstairs listening to this and, like, your mom being like, what is that? You know, like, especially the repetition. You know, you're listening to upstairs, you're like, what are you listening to up there? You said, nothing, mom. Just, it's the Bee Gees. It's the Bee Gees. It's just the drunk Bee Gees, and the record is skipping.
Yeah.
Or something. Like, there's no way you're putting this in a category when you're getting this and listening to it the first time.
No, and there's no way most people are going to want you to play the next song. Like, unless they like music and are interested, you're like, it's not exactly a welcoming experience.
It's almost like, hey, remember the side A?
Yeah.
Do you think we could go back to that side A? That was pretty, you know, I could actually understand what was kind of going on side A.
Right. Yeah. Oh, wait, you want me to buy the full album next? I don't know. Which one is it going to sound like?
Well, we're at the end of the EP. We know what sound that is. Actually, we don't, because this is the first episode. So, but That's Mark pouring his Boddingtons. That's the sign that we need to give this album a rating. And so what I think we've come up with is some sort of scale of number of pints of Boddingtons, or maybe number of pints that you would give this, maybe 1 to 10. But because our scale is flexible, I think we should be able to, adjust accordingly depending on what the album calls for, what would be most appropriate to the listening experience, right? As far as awarding it certain types of beverages. I haven't really thought about what I would give this one up to this point, but because it's the first one, I gotta give it 10 of 10. 10 pints.
10 pints.
10 pints.
I think if you had, 3 pints before, and then you finish the other 7, while you put repetition.
You want to drink the 3 before you put it on.
Yeah, exactly. You want to be 3 deep, feeling
Primed.
right. Have a couple while you enjoy Psycho Mafia and Bingo Master Breakout, and then you're just like, you finish the last 5 while you just keep flipping repetition back on. You just keep moving the needle from the back to the front. And you're like, is this?
I like
is
that.
it over again? No, it's back to the beginning. What do you mean? It's not the middle.
I like that. I think I'm gonna add to mine. Like, I'm giving it the perfect 10 because it's a good debut. I feel like I got all the tastes of, what the band is capable of. Sadly to say, a good portion of the band does not continue on after this album. But I think because it starts with that Psycho Mafia, I think a nice glass of very cheap red wine, while you put it on, a cheap glass of red wine, and then as many repetitions of that as you need to kind of get this into your head. Because honestly, the more that I think listening to that fall albums that I've listened to, they are albums that, I don't know how you feel, but the more you listen to these fall albums, unlike any other rock adjacent bands, the more you listen to them, the more you do appreciate the subtlety and then the Mark pull that he has on creating this artwork.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Just listening to the music, whether you're streaming it through, Spotify or YouTube, it's not in any sort of order typically. So I've listened to the same songs so many different times, not even realizing, thinking I'll just play this one album. And I'd be like, why is this song on? This isn't even, and then you're like, oh, this is version 7. I haven't listened to this one yet, but
Yeah, alternate takes.
And
some of the alternate takes are just as good, if not better. Yeah. And also, I'm standing by my perfect score as well, because the sound quality on this album, the mixing, and that's something I think we're going to get into later with some of these other studio albums that are not as well mixed. The fall really benefits from a well mixed album because it is so repetitive and because it is so simple in driving bass line that if you can hear everything that's going on, you really can get immersed in it,
Sure. And Mark doesn't use his voice. He uses it as an instrument. It's not a beautiful instrument, but he uses it as one. And the more you can get into his sound and the way he's using his yelps and screeches and things like that to, emphasize what he wants, the cooler it is and the more interesting it is.
Swinging black generation.